the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. George Carter is a scuba diver. He's written tons of magazine articles about his undersea adventures, like unearthing planes from World War II, and people kept telling him, write a book, so he did. It is entitled Ride with the Pirates. So this is what you do for a living, right?
Yeah, that was my career for, almost 30 years. I owned a dive store, and I did a lot of commercial diving, that kind of stuff.
So did you actually raise a B-25 bomber lost for over 50 years from a North Carolina lake?
I did.
Wow. How many diving experiences do you talk about in your book?
I chose, I think, 6 or 7 different adventures. Some are water-related and some are not. 6 or 7 different airplanes, lost everywhere from the Arctic Circle to Papua New Guinea to a lake in North Carolina to a lake in New Jersey and to Hawaii, Philippines, all over the world. And each and every one of them is memorable for a number of reasons.
Did you locate where these planes were, or did somebody else locate them and say, okay, go get that?
No, for the most part, that was all part of what we did, was to try to go out and find them and then determine whether it was a viable artifact worth, putting time and money into recovering it, and then making an effort to bring it back. Sometimes we were successful and sometimes not.
So you would recover something and hopefully someone would be interested enough in it to cover your expenses.
Usually we had a end user for the aircraft before we put that kind of investment into it. Somebody was interested in, I needed X, and we would go out and try to find one. I spent a few summers in the Arctic and, come home to winter time, and then a few long summers in the tropics, and it's kind of extremes. It's, it was an interesting time of my life because I got to experience, parts of the planet that I would never have any other reason to go there.
Can you always see when you go underwater? Isn't it dark?
No. Yes, sometimes it's all touchy-feely. It's, imagine yourself being in a closet at midnight trying to find your keys.
Yeah.
And other times, we were in Hawaii and gorgeous tropical sunsets and beautiful water. It's all part of, wow, how lucky could I be to be having this experience? After the fact, sometimes you think about it and go, how stupid were we?
Right, to crash your boat into a bunch of rocks, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, it was like, after the fact that everybody's okay, you go, that was close. I've always joked with my wife, I've used up my 9 lives and several other people.
Why were you almost kidnapped in the Philippines?
Well, we were picked up by a group of revolutionaries, and spent an uncomfortable hour or so laying in the dirt, and they released us, and that's how it went. So they want to know, can we make money off of these people or not? So,
right.
Fortunately, we had a very cooperative guide with us. Language barrier wasn't an issue, and it all turned out okay.
What's it like to almost run out of air?
Don't know it until it happens. And then that's all part of training and things that we do as divers, that, okay, there's a problem I've got to solve, and hopefully we have a backup plan to fix it. And it happens. It shouldn't happen, but, we're fallible human beings, and sometimes, our greed and our desire to get something done overwhelms our common sense.
Do you continue to do this to this day?
Just recreationally, just for fun. We always like to say, we found all the easy ones, and now in order to find some of these artifacts, you have to go, much further, much deeper, and it requires much more money.
Yeah. Are you doing any self-promotion of your book?
Yeah, I've done a bunch of book signings, a couple of museums that I have aircraft in, have copies of the book, and it's kind of how it's going.
Where might we find some of your stuff? What museums?
The B-25 that we raised in the lake that you talked about earlier is in the Southern Museum of Flight in Alabama. A B-17 that we brought off of the ice cap in Greenland is in the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. So there's a couple that are, in interesting cities and easy to go see.
Man, you got that right. Excellent adventures, George. Thanks. You'll never guess what Tim McNutt's profession is by the title of his book. No, all right, you will.
Allie Alligator's awesome smile. That's right. That's right.
How long have you been a dentist?
Actually, I've been in practice for about 30 years now.
And it took you this long to write a book for kids?
Well, I actually wrote the book 29 years ago or so, because really out on the market there was not anything that was written in a way that would encourage children to go to the dentist before they have problems. Most of the books at the time, and actually still probably, would talk about a child going to the dentist after they had a problem, a toothache or something of that nature, and tried to make it a less threatening type visit. But really we want children to go to the dentist before they have a problem, and hopefully then, make things a whole lot less of a problem, from a real early age. It's encouraged that children start seeing a dentist about 6 months after their first teeth appear. So, we normally start seeing children here at around a year to 18 months old.
It's the parents that have to bring them, though, right?
Right. So it's all about parent education and things, right?
Right. So what's the story? How's the story go?
Well, Allie is a young alligator and does not have all of her first set of teeth yet, and they're going to see Dr. Smiley, and so they go to Dr. Smiley's office, and along the way they meet some characters, and one of the characters they meet on the way is Freddy Frog, and she tells them where they're going and all that stuff, and then she gets to the dentist. And in the book, we try to use some of the words and things that we normally use here, like instead of Explorer, which is the little instrument that helps us, check for decay and things, we call it a tooth counter. Or like the light is Mr. Sunshine, or the suction is Mr. Thirsty. So we try to use the wordage that we would use here in the office, which again is a lot less threatening and things. And so Allie has her visit there at the dentist. Everything goes well, and she's in good shape. And, she's going home, and she meets Freddy Frog again. And Freddy Frog doesn't have any teeth, and so he wishes he had some teeth like Allie, so that he would, have a pretty smile and things. So just an encouraging thing for them to go, again, before all the baby teeth are present. And, see the things and be exposed to the things here and get a good checkup and hopefully keep things in good shape for a long time.
Can I find a copy of this book in your office?
Yes, ma'am. You sure can. Several of them, actually. So, yeah.
Do people buy them?
Yes, we, sell them out of the office and things here. Of course, they're available online and things as well. And we really appreciate it. And again, I go and speak to a lot of different daycares and nurseries and kindergartens and all of that kind of thing. And I normally try to take one to give to those kind of places where the children are being cared for, and hopefully, again, so that get a little parent education out and encourage them to seek a dentist, at an early age and things.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be great to have kids go, Mommy, please take me to the dentist?
Yeah, well, I tell you, it's an interesting thing. I mean, people ask me all the time whether or not the children cry and this, that, and the other. And, every now and then you may have a child that cries while they're here. But honestly, we have more children cry to leave than they do here, because when they come to the office, they get to pick out a movie and a prize basket, and most pediatric dental offices are in an open design, and so you don't go into a room all by yourself, which makes it a lot less threatening. They see other children there and doing what they're doing, and,
Yeah, I mean, I wish it was like that when we were kids. No wonder parents have so much anxiety. Thanks, Dr. McNutt. Alyssa Holstay also wrote a children's book while she was on maternity leave with her 3-month-old. And she's kind of a type A person working for a nonprofit, providing legal training to people involved in Pennsylvania's child welfare system. So she needed something to do when she wrote Doug the Dog Goes to the Beach. Alyssa.
It was random. I was, home and kind of bored. And my mind was, of course, running 1,000 miles per hour, as it always does. And I just laid him down for a nap and had this idea and scribbled it out on a legal pad and then showed my husband when he got home. I was like, so, want to see what I did today? I wrote a book. And he was like, what? What are you talking about? So it was just really random. But yeah, it was kind of for my son. I have two beautiful nieces. So kind of for them, just, I don't know, it was really cool. Like becoming a parent and actually reading children's books, I think kind of prompted some of it, I would say.
Did you read some of the children's books and go, I think I could do that?
Oh my goodness, I did. I read some of the children's books and was like, wow, this is the worst book I've ever read in my whole entire life. But for some reason, my child like loves some of these really silly kids books. And then I read other ones that I was like, oh my gosh, that has the most incredible message for a children's book. I feel like all adults should read it.
Right.
So I think it was kind of a combination of all of those things. But I do have a big doppy dog at home who goes by the name of Doug. And he was the rescue and of course the inspiration for the main character in the book.
So he is Doug the dog.
He is Doug the dog.
Well, you guys are in Pennsylvania, so you're kind of far from the beach, right?
Yes, ma'am. My family has been traveling to the beach as one big giant family trip since I was born in March, and my first family trip to the beach was in July. And we've gone every single solitary year since then. So when I say big family, I'm talking there were 12 to 15 of us all stuck in one house for the family beach trip for 1 week every single year.
Where?
Down at North Shores, which is outside of Rehoboth in Delaware.
Oh, okay.
It would be the last beach before you hit Cape Henlopen.
Okay.
Doug the dog is, like I said, our big doppy dumb dog here at home. And then his little Boston Terrier dog friend, Libby. She is also a dog here at the house. And then Kitty randomly showed up one day, walked right inside and just kind of inserted herself into our life. And then, of course, Doug's best friend, the boy, JJ, that's my son's name, Jacoby James, and we refer to him as JJ. So he's reflected in the book, but the rest of my big extended family is not. So I really based the main character in the book kind of off of our Doug. He was a rescue, cute little kind of ugly terrier looking puppy. And Doug was kind of like a gremlin. He just started growing overnight. And the next thing you know, he's 145 pounds of solid muscle. He is definitely not a terrier mix. The vet is thinking Shepherd, Lab, Akita, very hairy, right? But for a big dog, he is just kind of the dumbest dog. He's scared of the dark. He is scared of very little random things. But I'll tell you, he has this huge heart. And I think that's kind of what prompted this story. It was like our dog, Doug, going on these adventures through his dreams because he's just kind of too big and dumb to do anything else. Just this idea that Doug gets to travel to all of these different places and see all of these different things, just by falling asleep and dreaming about it at night. And of course that, the places that he travels and the adventures that he has while on his travels are all experienced, alongside of his best friend, JJ, his boy at home. So I do have two other books that would be part of the series if and when we decide to move forward with publishing them. But of course, publishing them comes with a cost. So
yeah.
While I'm all about making Doug the dog famous, I think that it has to, because I work for a not-for-profit, it has to come within my financial abilities to do so.
Okay.
So what we've done so far, Doug the dog, my family owns a pet and farm center that's been in business since the 1960s here in Carlisle. My great-grandfather started the business, and it's been passed down through the generations. So they were the first to hold a Doug the dog sale and book signing. I was also then invited down to a local library where they have a preschool reading program, and they invited me down to read Doug the Dog Goes to the Beach. And then they actually did a craft project after the book reading involving the kids making their own Doug the Dog puppets. And I do have a few friends who are teachers who are going to be taking Doug the Dog into their classroom.
Nice work, Alyssa. A lot of good ideas there. All right, we got to take a short break, but we will be back right after these words.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you: printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Lisa Cassatt's baby had recurring earaches and high fevers, and doctors told her he needed tubes in his ears so he wouldn't lose his hearing. Well, a week after his surgery at the age of 2, Lisa's son suddenly lost his developmental skills. Her book, A Mother's Heart, The Will to Fight, is her son's story. And Lisa, you say you had to fight for everything, including his paperwork.
They said that I would get his paperwork between 10 to 15 business days after his surgical procedure. Well, I never got it. And he could read. He was fully potty trained. He could dress himself at 2 years old. He went from that to not being able to talk, completely forgot how to use the bathroom, didn't remember how to dress himself 7 days after the surgical procedure. And when I would call to tell them, look, something's not right, and they told me that I would have to give it more time, that some kids just heal slower than others, and that he was just adjusting to the tubes that they put in his ears. That's what I was told. For 3 months, I asked 5 people, 2 nurses that dealt with blood work, 2 neurosurgeons, and a different doctor. And I said, by looking at this blood work and this paperwork, does this look like a child that has autism? And they said that this looks like a perfectly normal kid. I said, so what happens to a child that's perfectly normal, that goes in for a simple surgical procedure and comes out different? And I was told this, that in their professional opinion, he suffered an allergic reaction to the anesthetic he was given.
But it would be up to you to prove that.
Yeah. Like I said, it took me 5 years to fight for his paperwork and about 1.5 years to look everything up that they tested on him so I could understand it. And now, in order to take the next step, because I can prove it, I have to get an out-of-state lawyer to fight the state of Colorado.
How old is your son?
He is 10 now.
Did he regain what he lost?
Well, he can talk when he wants to. Potty training, it's a hit and miss. He can dress himself up to a point. You still have to help him. It's just until his brain remembers. It's a constant, repetitive, every day, got to go through the same routine to get him to do the same things he did on his own at 2. When all the tests were done at Children's Hospital, about 6 or 7 months after his surgical procedure, I was told he definitely did have ASD, and this was before his testing came back, and that I would go through the death of a child. This is what I was told, the one that I knew before, and the one I was going to have to get used to. But I needed to live my life the way I normally did, to keep his routine like I normally had been since he was born, and good luck to me.
As a result of an allergic reaction
to the anesthetic.
So your purpose in writing this book is what?
Well, I started hearing similar stories like mine. So when I did pharmacology for school is when I found out about the anesthetic that they give kids, which is a general anesthetic, and there's a component in there that paralyzes their brain, the main transmitter in the brain, and it has drastic effects on male kids 8 and under, not females, but males. When a child has an allergic reaction to that type of strong anesthetic, it damages that main transmitter.
Okay.
And it goes to all parts of the brain, and any damage to those parts can mimic behaviors like ADD, ADHD, and autism. My book was to get other families who've gone through the same situation as myself. With my flyers, I have mailed them to like over 500 libraries. I'm doing a book signing here in my town. I've been to some of the libraries here in Denver, Colorado, and I've talked to them to get that message out there.
Oh, Lisa, my heart goes out to you, and I hope that you are able to get all the help you need. Thank you. Nona Austin Roberts took care of her daughter when she had cancer, then her husband, her mom, and her mother-in-law before they died, and still managed to write 5 books. Writing's an escape for you, isn't it?
Oh, I can't wait to get back to it because yes, you've used the right word. It's an escape, it's a soulmate. It's really helpful to keep me going, to have a purpose, to have a reason to keep on and keep going. It really, really, truly is. You hit the nail on the head.
Now at the age of 78, Nona is publishing her first book. It's entitled Sara Madigan's Diary, and it's based on some family history, right?
Well, basically, my mom and my grandmother and great grandmother were all born and raised on farms in Kentucky. And I grew up in San Francisco, but we used to make trips there. And it was really basically from the stories that I heard from my mom about her growing up years and from my other relatives, just watching them do some of the chores and things that they did and were still doing back when I was growing up. Also, because Sara Madigan's diary has her husband is a very difficult man, and he basically is an abuser, but without any kind of physical abuse, but mental, emotional abuse. And I've known a couple of women who've had that experience.
Okay.
And so I was able to write about that.
What's the book about?
Okay. Sara Madigan is a 24-year-old in 1910, married to a man about 10 years older. She's had 3 children die from diphtheria. And then she has a 4th child that her husband, who is a very controlling man, he has an accident on a horse, and he is wondering or worrying that he's going to lose some control of her. Plus, she's very emotionally drained and in a bad shape because of the losing of her children. So he sends the 4th child away, just a tiny baby, 2 or 3 months old, sends that child away to people that she does not know, and he claims to her that he needed to do that for her own mental health, which she sort of buys and understands and believes. But then her life becomes a matter of doing whatever she can to go forward and stay alive to get her son back. So she has a purpose. She then has a purpose for her life. And when she steals this diary, she has a place to put her feelings that nobody else will see or know about. So those 2 things allow her to survive and ultimately thrive. But it's a tragedy that I think a lot of people back then, especially women, the challenges that women faced. I mean, in 1910, women weren't even allowed to vote.
Right.
And they were still basically under main control of their husbands.
Right.
And everybody saw it that way. It wasn't just an individual thing. It was women saw it that way, men saw it that way, churches saw it that way. So you are always constantly kind of struggling against that, knowingly or unknowingly. And so she was in that struggle and was able with those 2 things to have a purpose that she wanted to keep going and also to get her child back.
Well, you know, how sad that she had to prove to her husband that she was capable and worthy. When I'm reading what you wrote here. That's so sad to me, but so common back then.
Yes, and I think sometimes it's common today too, but not like it was then, because that was a very different time.
Yeah.
Very few women had jobs other than, and frankly, if you were a farmer like my grandparents and all that, and you go out and see them, women didn't have a moment to spare. It took all day long just to do the regular normal chores of life, just to take care of your family and to, if you lived on a farm, milking and all the things that you did that went along with that. It was a full-time job and very difficult job.
Yeah, yeah.
Required a lot of skill too, by the way.
We can do anything. We're amazing women.
We are.
All right, Nona. Finally, Scott Heaton is an aquatic therapist, does warm water therapy. He wrote a book a few years ago and decided it was time to publish it. It's entitled Opposite Land. Scott.
It's about a young boy who decides that he wants to live in opposite land. because he wants to be tall. He wants to be the teacher, not the student. He wants to do all these things that, in regular society he's not really allowed to do. And then, towards the middle of the book, he decides that, he needs to look at the other side as well and starts thinking about all the other things that would happen if he really did live in opposite land. And in the end, he decides that he'd rather stay where he is, the land that's opposite land.
What is opposite land? Everything he's not. Everywhere he's not.
Right.
Why does he want to go there? Is his life so bad?
No, he just, he wants to be tall, not small. He wants to be the teacher, not the student.
What inspired you to write this?
Well, back in the 70s, I was a wrestler at Cal Poly, and I had a teammate who was a big brute of a guy. He was a farrier. He did horseshoeing and so I would, when we would wrestle, I would take him down and put him on his back, and he'd fight for a few seconds, and then he'd stop, and he'd look at me, and he'd say, if we were in opposite land, I'd be on top. And, that stuck with me, and when I started thinking about putting together a children's book, that came to me, and I thought, what a great concept.
Do you have children?
I do. I have 4 children.
Oh, geez.
And I have one grandchild, and just about ready to have a second grandchild.
So they're all grown up. Why weren't you writing children's books while they were growing up?
Because you're busy when you're raising kids.
Right. So now your little grandkids can read it.
Yes.
Are you going to keep writing? Is this a dream you've always had?
I've got another idea or two. I'm going to kind of just wait and see what happens with this book first, and if I find that I'm motivated to sit down and start putting a pen to paper again, then I've got a couple ideas.
Well, are you doing anything? Are you to put it out there?
I'm putting it out on Facebook. I've got a couple of organizations that are helping to promote, and then we see a lot of people here at our aquatic center, and so I've got a book out, and we talk there as well, try to promote.
Well, isn't that opposite land right there? Going underwater?
I guess you could consider it though as well. Yeah, sure.
Does it feel good to be a published author?
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It's a good feeling, and I think the book is pretty meaningful. I think that the children and if parents or grandparents are reading it to them, I think that they feel good after reading it because there's a good message there.
Yeah, and the message is be happy with who you are. Thanks, Scott. That is it for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Right on, people.